Hello, welcome to Forget My Husband, I'll Go Make Money. Chapter 46. Why the hell did it take so... The Sylvanus knights, who had been waiting outside for a long time, began to complain as soon as the door opened. But the moment they saw Aristine come out, the words were stuck right back in. Their mouths fell open, and they forget that they wanted to act annoyed. Their bewildered expression only lasted a moment, and soon they slowly looked at Aristine from top to bottom, as if they were evaluating her. They had to admit, her outward appearance was incomparably beautiful. What a waste to give this to a barbarian. Should have let a noble knight like me treat her a little nice. Their eyes gleamed with lust and greed as they watched every step Aristine took. These were the people who made dirty jokes about her during her journey to Irigo. When Aristine reached the carriage, the head of the knights deliberately stretched out his hand. He had never done anything of the sort during that long journey. But now he smiled shamelessly as if he had always been a respectful knight. Back then, he simply didn't want to touch the dirty princess, but now it was a different story. Aristine acted like she didn't see the extended hand and climbed onto the carriage by herself. No, she was about to climb, and she would have had if the head knight had not snatched her hand. The knight held Aristine's hand tight and smiled insidiously. "What are you doing?" "I'm only escorting your highness, the princess." "Here, go on and enter the carriage." While talking, he touched Aristine's soft hand in an unpleasant manner. Aristine looked at what he was doing for a moment. Then she looked up and stared at the knight. "How dare you touch the body of an imperial princess without permission?" The knight was startled by her low tone and dignified look, which was peering straight at him. This was the first time the princess had asserted the authority of the imperial family in this manner. The knight was taken aback and didn't know how to react. "What are you doing or going on your knees and begging for mercy this instant?" The weight of the calm voice made the knight let go before he even realized it. And when he realized what he did, he felt ashamed. To think he reacted like this at the words of a princess they ridiculed. "Ha! Princess, you're quite something. Don't act like this is all of a sudden, when you know your situation very well." The knight purposefully laughed, exaggeratedly, and looked down at Aristine arrogantly. Even the imperial family has its own conditions. The eyes that looked Aristine up and down were filled with contempt, let alone any respect. "Princess, you must think you're Her Highness the second princess, huh?" The knight patted Aristine's shoulders like he was showing off, as if he was saying she can't do anything even if he touched her. "Well, they treat you a little nice in Irigo, and you're marrying the prince, so maybe you've forgotten who you really are." He chuckled, and his mouth twisted in a sneer. "Even so, he's still a barbarian." The knight rubbed Aristine's shoulders with his thumb. The skin was surprisingly smooth. "They're such savages, of course. They take good care of you, princess." His eyes, which had only been filled with anger due to the blow of his self-esteem, began to fill with his licentious emotions. His gaze slowly swept over her prominent collarbone and slender neckline. Aristine narrowed her eyes. "You must really love your subordinate." "What?" The knight frowned at the sudden and strange change of topic. "I knew the prince's mind was a little off, but..." Aristine chuckled. Aren't you acting like this because you want to be locked up together?" At those words, the expression of the knight who had been belittling Aristine stiffened. He was reminded of one of his men who was dragged to the dungeon while caked in blood. He heard that Tarkan made him that way. If I had been there, that definitely wouldn't have happened. Yes, we should have shown that barbaric bastard the skill of an imperial knight. To think that coward took advantage of my absence. He talked like that with his subordinates, but frankly, he never wanted to face Tarkan. He could tell just by looking at Tarkan. That man is a monster. Seeing the knight go pale, Aristine whispered in an amicable manner. I heard his nose was broken. Imagine if it was ripped off. That must be fun to see. Or, I think some other place is pretty good too. Aristine's gaze moved downwards, or more precisely, to the knight's crotch. I think this part's a better idea. What about you? Aristine smiled sweetly, looking as beautiful and pure as an angel. Even though what she was saying was, I'll cut your precious third leg into pieces. The knight unconsciously covered the area between his legs. His face fell, and his expression went dark. Nothing had happened yet, but his precious place was already aching. Aristine chuckled when she saw the knight shrink away in an unsilent manner. Then she climbed into the carriage by herself. I don't know how he survived so long without the ability to learn. Aristine sat down and exhaled softly. You would think they would be more cautious after one of them ended up in a state. I have to deal with the knight as well, soon. And she needed an excuse to do that. It'll be nice if they cause trouble on their own. He was worried that they might get scared after this and act carefully. No. If they could use their brain like that, what happened just now wouldn't have occurred. On the contrary, he might make even more noise because he was humiliated in front of his subordinates. He was a stupid type. Dad would only think of restoring his trampled pride. Aristine looked out of the window. The knights were parading around the carriage like they were escorting her. She could easily find the head knight's face in their midst. Sure enough, he looked so outraged that he was almost heaving. He seemed very ashamed by his pathetic reaction to her, saying she would chop off his precious thing. It felt even more shameful, because his men were glancing at him from time to time while acting like they weren't. Oh, he looks like he's going to explode soon. In a way, he was a very consistent person. To Aristine, this was a good sign. While she was thinking that, the carriage arrived in front of the ceremonial hall. Inside the gorgeously decorated ceremonial hall, Diana stood in a corner of the lobby, trying to manage her expression. The plaza outside the ceremonial hall was filled with all kinds of people, including reporters. Even though she was indoors, the buzz and excitement were clearly transmitted to her. Everyone was looking forward to seeing the woman who would become the wife of the kingdom's hero, Tarkan. I should have been the one getting these expectations. Diana was the only woman close to Tarkan. The only woman Tarkan had by his side. Originally, she would have naturally become Tarkan's wife. Tarkan would become king, she would become queen, and they would reign over this country. She thought there was no other possible future. But the princess of Sylvanus, of all people. Diana's expression didn't change at all, but tightly clenched her fist, which would tremble. Oh my, Diana Nim. The young misses who were chatting in the lobby saw Diana and acted familiar with her. Diana, who was always composed and mature, was the object of admiration of many young misses. Furthermore, Diana's older brother was a brave warrior who sacrificed himself in the Battle of the Plains to save his comrades. That story was famous enough to be sung by the birds. Everyone was moved by the noble sacrifice of the young warrior. Needless to say, the prestige of Diana's family, the Count family of Palamon, increased because of this. Your ladyships. Diana greeted them with a smile, as if she wasn't angry just now. You look beautiful today. Aren't you more beautiful than the bride? What are you saying? Her Highness Aristine is a very beautiful person. Diana elevated Aristine while giving a charming and relaxed smile. I heard the princess is beautiful. They said everyone was surprised at the royal audience. But even so, she's a Sylvanian, you know. So small and unattractive. The young misses lowered their voices to a whisper, as if afraid someone will hear. I probably shouldn't say this, but I think someone like Diana Neem suits His Highness Tarkan better. Me too. Diana didn't say a word, but a corner of her lips charmingly curled upwards. That's the end of chapter 46. Chapter 47. Sensing that the atmosphere was not bad, the young missus grew more excited and chattered on. When I see the two of you, you look so good together. And His Highness Tarkan only lets Diana Neem stay by his side, right? And you know, so many young misses would love to serve His Highness. His Highness seems to be fond of Diana Neem as well. Diana allowed the immature young missus to keep talking while enjoying it to the fullest. It was only when the young missus were starting to run out of things to say that she finally opened her mouth. I'm thankful that your ladyships think so highly of me. But I don't think we should be talking about this on their wedding day. Oh, I'm sorry. No need to be sorry. I know very well that your ladyship speak with good intent. However, this marriage was decided by His Majesty. The king decided this marriage, not Tarkan. That was what Diana wanted to emphasize. I see. Of course, we can't discuss something His Majesty has decided. So that's why His Highness Tarkan... Oh. The gazes of the young missus looking at Diana were tinged with sadness. They were unfortunate lovers who were forced apart by the king's command. Even though arranged marriages were inevitable in the aristocratic society, Diana was someone who was fully qualified to marry Tarkan. The young missus squeezed Diana's hand tightly. Diana Neem, we're rooting for you. Cheer up. Diana looked at the young missus with an expression that said she didn't understand why they were suddenly acting like this. Thank you. It felt nice to be cheered all of a sudden. Her tone seemed to say, although I don't know what for, being cheered on it is nice. The young missus sighed, feeling even more sorry for her when they saw her react as if it didn't even cross her mind that they were talking about her relationship with Tarkan. Her heart is so clear. If only she was a little greedier. Seeing Diana like this, they couldn't help but hate the princess. Diana gave a bright smile. It was lovely talking to your ladyships. For the first time in a while. I would love to talk more. I have to go to see the princess. The princess? The young missus asked in surprise. Why in the world was she going to see her love rival on the other's wedding day at that, and while the other party was wearing a wedding dress? Imagine how lonely and anxious the princess must be. After all, she came to Irago to get married. And this place, is unfamiliar to her. I understand that, but why Diana Neem? I'm the only lady around her age that she knows, and I don't think the princess will take care of her. As Diana said that, her gaze turned distance for a moment. Her eyes looked sad. Either way, I think the princess will be more comfortable with me too. Besides, I also met her on the first day she arrived at the palace. Diana smiled as if to hide her sadness. The young missus frowned. Doesn't mean the princess called Diana first. Diana didn't say that for certain, but considering her expression, that's what it sounded like. Don't tell me she called Diana Neem on purpose. Knowing the relationship between His Highness Tarkan and Diana Neem, he didn't want to think too badly of the princess after all. It was a political marriage, so it wasn't like she stole Tarkan away on purpose. Even though they grumbled because they felt pain when they saw Diana at Tarkan's wedding. They didn't think the princess herself was a bad person, but now they and Mrs. exchanged glances with each other. None of the Sylvanus royals even came. So she was getting married without any family around. Diana mumbled as if she felt sorry for the princess and let out a small sigh. Hearing Diana's consideration for the princess, even under such circumstances, made the young missus feel heartbroken. And they hated the princess even more. Enough members of the imperial family came, and she must not be treated well in her home country. For someone like that part of her is better than our Diana Neem. The thoughts of the young missus were clearly reflected on their faces, and Diana had to hold in her laughter. Since there were so many young misses with low status like this, they could be used to spread rumors. Diana glanced at the clock on the wall, then at the waiting room of the bride. Shall I go now? By now, Princess was alone in the bride's waiting room. She knew because she had been watching and waiting for the chance to be alone with the princess. The court ladies who helped dress the princess had returned to their original duties, and the 4 handmaids who stayed with the princess for a while had rushed out for some reason. Judging by the grave expression on their faces, they were likely not going to return for a while. If she went in right away, it would seem like she had been waiting for the princess to be alone. So she wasted some time outside. I think this is enough. Then I shall take my leave now. See you next time, your ladyships. That's the end of chapter 47. Chapter 48. Aristine turned her head at the sound of the door suddenly being opened. The maids are back already? The maids had been getting on each other's nerves and left the room angrily, so she didn't think they would come back for a while. However, the person who entered the waiting room was completely different from what Aristine expected. It was her. The woman that was with Tarkan in the mirror surface. The woman who Tarkan whispered to that his heart would not change. Greetings to the princess. Diana bowed gracefully and gave Aristine a soft smile. I am Diana. I met you briefly before. Perhaps you remember? I remember. You poured me tea. I'm honored you remember me, princess. Diana bowed her head again. She was afraid that if she didn't, she might expose the warped expression on her face. The princess looked more beautiful in the wedding dress than she expected. The men who saw her for the first time today would fall in love and also fall into despair. Because the moment they fell in love, Aristine became someone's wife. His Highness Tarkan, Tarkan's wife. Diana clenched her fist tightly. I see. And what business might you have with me, young miss? At Aristine's words, Diana raised her head and smiled. Well, of course, I'm here to congratulate your highnesses on your wedding. As Diana spoke, her sea blue eyes grew slightly wet. The two of you look really good together. Her faint smile wavered softly like a candle in the dark. Anyone could tell she wasn't just congratulating them. Her smile seemed to imply a very messy and muddy love triangle. She smiled like a tragic heroine who was telling her man's wife that she was wishing for their happiness while sadly stepping away. Your husband and I have something very special between us. A very deep story that you don't know about. It felt exactly like that. But all she said was, congratulations. And you couldn't ask more about it because she said the two of them looked good together. No smile would make a new bride more uncomfortable and uneasy than this. However, she picked the wrong opponent. Thank you. Aristine nodded indifferently. For the sake of politeness, her gaze was on Diana, but it wasn't focused at all. What the? Diana was startled when she saw Aristine look completely unconcerned. Considering what happened at the last welcome banquet, she knew the princess was not that oblivious. He must have understood the underlying meaning of what I said. How come there's no reaction? I shouldn't be like this. Diana began to speak a little more bluntly. She had to tell the princess exactly what kind of person she was to Tarkan. His Highness Tarkan and I have practically grown up together. A sensual smile arose on Diana's face. His Highness' mother and my mother were close friends. So were my brother and His Highness. Diana's gaze grew distant, as if she was reminiscing about the time, and her expression turned affectionate and sad. His Highness' mother showed me so much love. His mother wanted her to be her daughter-in-law and treated her very well. That was the nuance behind those words. Because of that, His Highness has always taken great care of me and cherished me. Their relationship had been special since they were young. The relationship between their families was so good that it wouldn't have been strange for them to get married. Right, that's how it was. Diana was captivated by her own words and thoughts. She was special to Tarkan. But someone suddenly came between the two of us. The sight of Aristine adorned in a wedding dress and sitting proudly in the bride's waiting room could not be more offensive to her eyes. That shit should have been mine. However, Diana skillfully hid her emotion and spoke sweetly to Aristine. His Highness normally doesn't have any women around him because of his cold-hearted nature. Then she added, Your Highness, the princess, must have experienced it too. She was saying the cold-hearted Tarkan must have treated Aristine coldly. It's different for me since I've known him for a long time, but having said that, Diana glanced at Aristine. Aristine didn't have any reaction. Initially, she didn't seem to be paying attention to Diana, but now she looked completely uninterested. You will be treated coldly by your husband, but I'm special to your husband. He treats me well. Even though she said it so bluntly, the princess... Diana was strangely anxious. He moved closer to Aristine and continued to round her mouth. I never even imagined that His Highness Tarkan would marry Your Highness the Princess. She was crossing the line even farther. Then, as if pulling away, she waved her hand earnestly and added, I didn't mean anything else. It's just Thyric and Sylvanus have been enemies for such a long time. I didn't expect a marriage like this to happen. Leona was now standing in front of Aristine. She looked right into Aristine's eye, then spoke forcibly, one word at a time. For the sake of peace, the marriage between your highness must be successful. Then her red lips parted to ask, "Isn't that so? Tarquin's only love is me, but for the sake of peace, he has no choice but to marry you. Right? Go ahead and say yes." That was exactly what her question sounded like. Even though the princess hadn't shown much reaction so far, she wouldn't be able to bear it after this. "I can't let you get married like this without any issue." Diana's eyes were tinged with delight as she imagined Princess incoming hysteria. "Go on, get angry, scream, and cry for all to see." While such thoughts were running through Diana's mind, Aristine was in pure amazement. Is this supposed to be interesting? Frankly, there was nothing more boring and unexciting than hearing someone brag about their boyfriend. There were times when she saw people showing off their lover in the Monarch's sight, and that's exactly how she felt. If they were facing death while having the love of their century, you might find it interesting. Bragging about your lover is always filled with the boringness of a promised victory. No effect, no intrigue, no meaning. Why did Diana come all the way here to do this? Who asked about the lovey-dovey story between the two of them? She didn't ask, nor was she curious. Honestly, I was wondering how long she was going to talk, so I just kept silent, but whether Diana was oblivious to it or no, she kept running her mouth without getting tired. I've heard people like to show off their love all the time, regardless of when. So this is why Aristine was not interested in Diana, nor was she interested in their relationship. So no matter what Diana said or nuanced with implied, she had no intention of consuming her mental faculties to dissect every little thing and pay attention to them. It was enough for her to do that in the political circles, or while doing business. To Aristine, Diana only meant one thing, that is, whether Diana is Tarquin's lover could really become a negotiating card for Aristine to use while negotiating with Tarquin. Apart from that, she had no other interest. It wasn't worth Aristine's wasting time to think of her deeper meaning of her words. Diana would never even imagine that Aristine had judged her that way. By now, she was looking at Aristine anxiously, waiting for Aristine's response. "Hurry up, get angry." Upon receiving the gaze, Aristine decided she might as well empathize with this boring story. After all, the woman's eyes were earnestly desiring a reaction, so ignoring it felt kind of weird. Besides, whether Diana is my business partner's lover or someone special, it will be better to treat her well. Why? Socializing was so hard. While thinking that, Aristine returned Diana's smile. "Thank you. I will be sure to have a successful marriage, as you said." Diana's lips stiffened at the words that were completely different from what she expected. She forced a smile on her lips and emphasized what she said. "Yes, a marriage is usually a union between a couple who love each other, but this marriage is for peace rather than anything else. So you have to succeed. I know very well that my marriage with Tarquin is not a simple union between a couple, but a union above all others for the goal of world peace. Aristine nodded earnestly. She hoped the discussion would keep going in this direction rather than the boring lover brag. Leona looked at Aristine's tidy face and grit her teeth fiercely. Even though she tried not to, her jaw couldn't help but clench. What is she saying? Her marriage is on a different level from ordinary people or something? The blue eyes looking at Aristine froze over heavily like the winter sea. Her marriage is on a different level, so I shouldn't interfere? No. Nothing could drive Diana crazier than those words. Even if Tarquin's marriage with the princess was called off, Diana could not stand it. Even if Tarquin ended up marrying her, their marriage would not have this kind of a special meaning. It would just be a normal royal wedding. The only reason this marriage was so special that it drew the world's attention was because it was a union between Aristine and Tarquin. A marriage that ended hundreds of years of enmity and hostility. And love that arose. What else could be more heart-rending than this? The protagonist should be Tarquin and herself, no Aristine. That's the end of chapter 48. Chapter 49. The marriage was already here. It could not be reversed. If so, then I will never, never let you get your hands on his love. A musky shadow fell over Aristine's face. Diana's face. In it, anger and jealousy flashed in her eyes. It will personally make sure you have the most unhappy marriage in the world. Imagining Aristine crying in pain because of that unhappy life made her feel a little better. After calming her surging anger, Diana smiled. Regardless, there's no way His Highness Tarquin will be interested in the princess. Tarquin said his heart should not change. His heart had remained the same for more than 10 years. He could only guess how much that strong and sturdy heart had been hurt. No matter how hard she tried or how close she got to him, he never wavered. Diana was cut and stabbed several times by that wall that was as sharp as thorns. There's no way it'll change now. Diana snorted inwardly. Aristine would definitely go through the same thing. However, suddenly she remembered how surprised Tarquin looked when he saw Aristine after she had cleaned up, and also how he protected Aristine and confronted the queen during the official royal audience. Her heart stirred. It was the first time Tarquin had used political wordplay in such a manner. No. Besides, she was surprised too when the princess came out after washing up. Anyone would be surprised. And Tarquin had always been the type to take care of his people, which is why he protected the princess from the queen. Just when Diana was struggling to convince herself, "So, is that all you have to say?" Yes. Diana nodded her head in a daze. She never imagined that things would go this way. So she definitely had nothing more to say. I see. Thank you for the congratulations. Aristine thanked her, then gestured as if to say, "You may leave now." It was quite obviously driving her out. Diana stood in place as if she was standing her ground. She couldn't just leave after accomplishing nothing. She intended to make Aristine feel so betrayed and humiliated that she would go ahead and confront Tarquin. It would be even better if she would question Tarquin and got angry at him. even if that didn't happen. She hoped the princess would throw things and break them in anger after she left. This wedding has to fail. Even if the political marriage was not broken. She wanted the wedding itself to retain a bad image in people's minds. Aristine's marriage, life must begin with a scar. To the point that His Highness Tarkin does not take a single step into the bridal chamber. He was going to make that happen. Diana's eyes flashed dangerously, but just then... Durante, what are you looking at like that? Mukali asked, and Durante shook his head in response. Nothing. Do you know where the princess maids are? I mean, they must be next to the princess, of course. Durante glanced at Mukali without saying a word, then he looked away. At that, Mukali grew curious. There's no that he was curious, because it was about the princess. No, scratch that. He was certainly curious because it concerned the princess, but that was only because he had to keep an eye on her. No other reason at all. He cleared his throat for no reason and asked Durante. Why do you ask? No, it's just... I don't think they're with the princess. Durante swallowed the latter part of his sentence. His gaze turned to the bride's waiting room. It had been quite some time since Diana entered the waiting room after talking with these young noble ladies. I doubt Diana would go and see the princess if there was someone else in there. Durante slowly rubbed his finger on his scabbard. Everyone else remembered the prince's beautiful visage that he saw at the welcome banquet. Even the royals who came to Tarquin's palace to ridicule the princess were the same. However, it was different for him. When he thought of the princess, the first thing that came to his mind was a face covered in dirt and sweat, and a pair of eyes that shone like the stars. I hope you do not deceive me from now on. The voice covered his ear like the wind blowing in the plains. Tack! His fingers wrapping on his scabbard stopped. Regardless of what the princess said, the only thing that mattered to him was his lord. Back then, he didn't intend on deceiving the princess, but if necessary, he would deceive her as much as he needed to. That is, if it was for his master's sake. Where are you going, Durante? Mukali asked when she saw Durante walking away. I'm stepping out for a bit. What? Hey! Mukali called Durante didn't stop at Devil. Rather, his back kept getting farther away. Mukali heavily sighed. Gosh, this guy and his temper. If he went after Durante, Durante would just stop and stare at him without saying a word. I'd rather he just said something. Everyone was always telling him to manage his temper, but in his opinion, Durante had the nastiest temper. So why did he even bring up the princess in the first place? And he didn't even answer. Mukali, who was watching Durante's broad back, was startled when he saw Durante's destination. The bride's waiting room? The door Durante was knocking on belonged to the bride's waiting room. What business does the guy have with the princess? That's the end of chapter 49. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye bye.